The office was quiet at 05:30, and I had learned to trust quiet the way other people trust noise. 3 weeks into command, I still came in before the building woke. I would unlock the door, set my cover on the corner of the desk, and stand for a moment at the window that looked out over the parade field. From the second floor, you could see the whole rectangle of it. The reviewing stand folded down and hauled away now, the grass already recovering where 400 pairs of boots had stood in formation. In the gray light, it looked like any field. Nothing about it announced what had happened there. That was the thing about parade fields. They held ceremonies and they held nothing, and by morning you could not tell the two apart. I poured coffee from the pot I had started, and I let the steam warm my hands, and I looked at the grass, and I thought about the morning a major I had never met knocked my cover to the ground in front of everyone. People ask me, when they hear the story, whether I planned it, whether I stood there and let it happen because I knew what was coming. They want the version where I am 3 moves ahead, where the whole thing is a trap I sprung. I understand why. It is a more comfortable story if the person being humiliated is secretly in control. But that is not how it went. I did not plan it. I only refused to disappear. And the orders of the day did the rest. I have had 3 weeks to decide how I feel about it. Standing at this window with this coffee, and I have landed somewhere that surprises me. I am not proud of the way it happened. A person should not have to have her name read over 400 soldiers to be treated like a human being on a field. The morning was a failure before it was a victory, and the failure was not mine. But I am proud of the 10 seconds in the middle of it, the 10 seconds that belonged to me before the generals and the machinery took over. I am proud that I did not become smaller, and I did not become crueler. Those 10 seconds are the only part I would keep if I could only keep one part. The rest of it, the generals crossing the grass, the color draining out of a man's face, the whole polished theater of a truth arriving on schedule, all of that was just the army being the army. It is very good, the army, at eventually getting the record straight. It is not always fast about it. It was not fast about it for me for 19 years. But on that one morning, it caught up all at once, in public, with witnesses, and I understand why people want the story to be about that. The catching up is dramatic. The 10 quiet seconds are not. And yet the 10 quiet seconds are the whole thing. If I had spent them shrinking or striking, the catching up would have found a different woman standing there, and it would not have meant what it meant. Let me take you back to the field. The morning of the change of command was clear and cool, the kind of late summer morning that makes a post look like a recruiting poster. I got there early on purpose. There is a habit in my branch that outsiders never quite understand. We arrive early and we walk the ground. Before a mission, before a render safe, before anything that matters, you walk the ground with your own 2 feet and you look at it with your own 2 eyes, because a map is a promise and the ground is the truth, and the gap between the two is where people die. I had been walking ground for 19 years. I was not going to stop the morning I took command. So I did not go to the holding room where the official party waited with their coffee and their programs and their small, careful conversation. I went to the field. I wore my service uniform, the everyday one, because I wanted to see the soldiers before I was a colonel to them, before the colors were in my hands and the distance set in for good. I wanted 5 minutes when I was just a woman walking the line, looking at the young faces that were about to be mine to keep alive. Command Sergeant Major Ruth Vidal found me at the end of the second rank. She was a compact, unhurried woman with 26 years in and eyes that missed nothing, and she had flown in from the group a week early to meet me because that is what the good ones do. She fell in beside me without a word, the way senior enlisted do when they have decided you are worth the trouble. "They've been asking about you, ma'am," she said. "The soldiers. Word gets around. New commander, EOD, combat time. They want to see what you're made of." "What did you tell them?" "I told them they'd find out the same way I did." She almost smiled. "By watching." I walked the line. I did not make speeches. I looked at name tapes and I read patches, and I noticed the ones who stood a little too straight because they were nervous, and the ones who stood easy because they had been downrange and knew that a parade was the least dangerous thing the army would ever ask of them. a specialist near the end, had the EOD crab pinned on his chest, the badge we all wear, the bomb with the wings and the wreath. And he caught me looking and lifted his chin a quarter inch, and I gave him the smallest nod back. And something passed between us that had no words in it. Later I would learn his name, and it would matter. That morning he was just a young soldier who had walked toward the thing everyone else walks away from, and I was the officer who was about to be responsible for whether he kept doing it and kept coming back. I kept walking. There was a private in the third rank who could not have been more than 19, standing at a parade rest so rigid it looked painful, and I stopped in front of her and told her to breathe, that the field was not going to bite her, and she let a little of the tension out of her shoulders and gave me a grateful, terrified, half smile. There was a staff sergeant with a combat patch and the calm of a man who had already seen the worst thing the army was going to show him, and he did not need me to tell him anything. So I just met his eyes and moved on, and he understood that too. Walking a line is a kind of reading. You read who is scared and who is steady, who is performing and who is present, and you file it away, because someday one of them is going to be kneeling next to something that wants to kill him. And the more you know about him now, in the safe daylight of a parade, the better you will be able to keep him alive later. Command Sergeant Major Vidal walked it with me and said almost nothing, which is the highest form of trust a senior enlisted soldier can offer a new officer. She was not narrating the unit for me. She was letting me see it myself, and only when I paused a beat too long at a particular face would she murmur one sentence. The load-bearing fact, the thing I needed. Deployed twice. Lost a friend last year. Best mechanic on the post, chip on his shoulder about it. Small keys to large people, handed over quietly, in passing, the way the good ones do. That was when I heard the voice behind me. "Excuse me, this area is for the ceremony party." I turned. A major was coming across the grass toward me with the particular walk of a man who has decided he is in charge of something. He was tall, well-built, immaculate, the kind of officer who looks like the photograph on the recruiting brochure and has spent his career making sure of it. His name tape said Rourke. I did not know him. I would learn that he was the installation protocol officer, borrowed for the day to run the mechanics of the ceremony, the seating and the timing and the flow, and that he took it seriously, and that taking it seriously had curdled somewhere along the way into taking himself seriously. "Good morning, Major," I said. He did not hear it. He was already looking past me at the formation, at the reviewing stand, at his own timeline, and I was an obstacle in it. "Junior officers stage in the rear," he said. "With the staff, we're about to seat the official party and I can't have people wandering the field." He glanced at my uniform, at the fact that I was in service dress and not in the blue coat the ceremony party would wear, and I watched him do the math and get it wrong. To him, I was a captain or a lieutenant who had drifted where she did not belong. Some aide or protocol assistant who had not gotten the word. "Let's move," he said. "Now." I have been ordered around by better men than Major Rourke. I have been ordered around by men who had earned the right and men who had not. And over 19 years, I had learned the difference and learned, more usefully, that it did not matter much in the moment. When someone tells you to move, you can move or you can explain, and explaining almost never goes the way you want. So I did the thing I have done 10,000 times. I said nothing. I started to step aside. But Command Sergeant Major Vidal did not step aside. And that changed the geometry of it. She stood her ground beside me, and Rourke's eyes went to her, to the Sergeant Major's chevrons and the rocker and the star, and something about a senior enlisted soldier refusing to scurry offended him more than my presence had. "Sergeant Major, you too," he said. "Clear the field." "Sir," Vidal said in the flat, careful voice that senior enlisted use when they are giving an officer one last chance to not make a mistake. "You might want to." "I might want to what?" He was irritated now. The timeline was slipping. There were 400 soldiers in formation and a reviewing stand filling with rank and a clock in his head running down, and here were 2 women who would not move. And he made the decision that men like him make when they feel their authority thinning. He decided to be physical about it. He put a flat hand against my shoulder to turn me, and when I did not turn fast enough for him, he reached up and knocked the cover off my head. It was not a large thing. He did not strike me. He flicked the brim with the back of his fingers the way you would knock a fly off a table, a small, contemptuous motion, and my cover came off and dropped to the grass and rolled a half turn and stopped. The field went very quiet in my part of it, not the whole field. Most of the 400 could not see it and did not know, but the near rank saw, the specialist with the crab saw, Vidal saw, and I heard her breath change. I looked at my cover on the grass. Then I looked at Rourke. "Are you deaf?" he said. I said the rear. I want to tell you what happened inside me in that second, because it is the only part of the story that was ever truly mine. Everything after belonged to the orders and the generals and the machinery of the day. But that second belonged to me. There is a thing that happens to a woman who has spent her life being underestimated. Two impulses arrive at the same instant, and they arrive every time, and they never stop arriving, no matter how many years or how much rank you put between yourself and the girl you used to be. The first impulse is to make yourself small, to apologize for standing where you stood, to smooth it over, to let the man save face, to bend so the moment can pass and everyone can pretend it did not happen. I felt that impulse the way you feel a current in cold water pulling at my legs, telling me to bend down fast and grab my cover and murmur an apology I did not owe and get off the field. The second impulse is the opposite. It is to strike, to pull the rank I had, to say the words that would drop him where he stood, to make him as small in front of the formation as he had just made me. I felt that one too. I would be lying if I said I did not. 19 years of being told to stage in the rear had built a pressure in me, and here was a valve, and part of me wanted to open it all the way and watch his face come apart. I did neither. I bent down slowly and I picked up my cover from the grass. I brushed the dew off the brim with 2 fingers. I put it back on my head, and I squared it, and I straightened, and I set my feet, and I looked Major Rourke in the eye, and I said nothing at all. I was not going to make him small. I was only going to stop making myself small for him. He did not understand what he was looking at. He saw a junior officer being insubordinate, refusing a lawful instruction, wasting his timeline. His face was getting ready to say something else, something louder, and I could see it coming, and I let it come. I want to be precise about the pressure of that moment, because it is the part people underestimate. When a man humiliates you in public, the crowd does not side with you, not at first. The crowd sides with the smooth resolution. 400 soldiers and a stand full of rank did not want justice in that instant. They wanted the awkwardness to end. They wanted me to bend down fast and grab my cover and mutter something and get off the field so the ceremony could go on, and no one would have to feel the discomfort of having watched. That is the true weight on a person in that position. It is not only the one man's contempt, it is the whole field's silent wish that you would please just make it easy for everyone by disappearing. I felt that wish like a hand on my back. I had felt it my whole life. It is the reason the smaller version of me had spent so many years apologizing for taking up space. Because the pressure to smooth things over is enormous, and it disguises itself as courtesy, as being a team player, as not making a scene. But I had learned, slowly and at real cost, that a scene is not the worst thing. The worst thing is agreeing to vanish so that a man who wronged you can be comfortable. I had done enough vanishing. I was done buying other people's comfort with my own dignity, and I was especially done doing it on the morning I took command of 400 lives. I had spent 19 years learning that the loudest thing I owned was my silence. He had not learned that yet. Some people never do. To understand why I did not bend and did not strike, you have to understand who I was before I was a colonel, which is to say, you have to understand the trade. I came into the Army in the summer of 2004, 22 years old, from a mill town upstate that had been dying politely for 2 generations. I was small. I have always been small. 5'4" in boots, and in a room full of soldiers, I disappear unless I decide not to. When I volunteered for explosive ordnance disposal, the officer processing my packet looked at me over his glasses and asked if I understood what the job was. I told him I understood that it was walking toward the thing everyone else runs from. He said that was the recruiting poster version. The real version, he said, is kneeling in the dirt for 2 hours next to something built to kill you, in the heat, with sweat in your eyes, and everyone you love a very long way away, and keeping your hands still. Keeping your hands still, he said, is the whole job. Anyone can walk toward it once. The trade is doing it 1,000 times and keeping your hands still every single time, I said I could keep my hands still. I did not know yet whether that was true. You never do until the day you find out. I found out. I found out in Iraq in 2007 on my first team on a road that had been seeded with pressure plates like a farmer seeds a field, and I found out that the officer with the glasses had been telling the truth. The trade is stillness. In EOD, you do not get to be loud, you do not get to be fast. Loud and fast are how you end up as a folded flag handed to someone in a quiet room. You get to be right, or you get to be gone. And the way you stay right is by refusing to let anyone, including yourself, rush you. That is the discipline I brought to the parade field, not patience exactly. Patience is passive. This was something harder. This was the trained refusal to let another person's urgency become my emergency. Major Rourke was in a hurry. His hurry was not my problem. I had spent my whole career next to things far more dangerous than an angry major, and I had learned to let the danger be what it was and to keep my own hands still. Command Sergeant Major Vidal knew the trade too, in her own branch of it. That is why she did not move. Between the two of us, we had almost 50 years of learning that the ground does not care how loudly you want it to be different. You deal with what is in front of you. You keep your hands still. "They're your soldiers now, ma'am," she had said to me on the line, before any of it. "They've been waiting to see you." They were about to see me. They were about to see all of me, whether I wanted it or not. But in that second on the field, before the orders were read, the only person who had seen me clearly was the sergeant major standing at my shoulder, refusing to move, waiting with me for the thing she already knew was coming. There is a morning I do not talk about much, and I am going to tell you about it now, because it is the reason my hands stay still. It was 2011, in Afghanistan, in the fall. I was a captain by then, an EOD team leader, and we got a call to a district center where an aid convoy had stalled behind a suspected belt of buried charges. There were trucks full of food and medical supplies, and a road that could not be trusted, and the local police would not move, and the sun was climbing, and every hour the truck sat. There was an hour someone with a phone and bad intentions had to do something about it. We sent the robot first. You always send the robot first. That is the whole point of the robot. It is the thing that dies instead of you. The robot went down the road on its treads, its camera feeding back a gray picture, and 50 meters short of the convoy, it stopped. A wire, or the heat, or the terrain. It does not matter which. It stopped, and it would not answer. And there it sat. A dead machine on a road we could not trust, between us and 100 people who were running out of time. So I walked. That is the part of the job the brochures do not show you. Sometimes the robot dies, and there is no one to send but yourself. And you put on the suit, the heavy green suit that will not save you if you are wrong. And you walk the long walk by hand. I walked it that morning. Every step was a decision. Every foot of that road I read with my eyes and my probe, kneeling, still, slow, the sweat coming down inside the suit. My whole world narrowed to the square meter in front of my knees. I do not remember being afraid, which people never believe, but fear is loud, and there was no room for anything loud. There was only the ground and my hands, and the rule I had learned in 2007, be right or be gone. I was right that morning. I found what was buried and I made it safe. One charge and then another, and then the thing under the dead robot that had been meant for whoever came to recover it. And I cleared the road, and the convoy rolled, and 100 people who did not know my name ate that week because a small woman kept her hands still in the dirt for 2 hours. I remember small things from that road, the way you remember small things from the most important hours of your life, while the large things blur. I remember that my knees found every stone in the dirt, and that I stopped noticing them. I remember the sound of my own breathing inside the suit, slow and deliberate, because I had trained myself to breathe slow when my body wanted to gulp. Since a body that gulps is a body that shakes, and a body that shakes is a body that makes the last mistake it will ever make. I remember that the dead robot, when I finally reached it, was warm from the sun, and that there was something almost tender in the way it had failed. A good machine that had gone as far as it could, and then handed the rest to the person it was built to spare. I remember thinking, very clearly, that no one watching from the trucks believed a woman my size should be the one out there, and that their disbelief was the least interesting fact on that road, and that I would deal with it never, because it did not exist anywhere except inside their heads. A piece of it caught me anyway, not on the road. On the way back, a small one, and a fragment went into my shoulder, and I have a scar there now, and an ache that comes back every cold morning to remind me. They gave me a bronze star with a V on it and a purple heart, and I put them in a drawer because the medals were never the point. The point was the 100 people, and the road, and the hands that stayed still. I learned something on that road that I carried onto the parade field 15 years later. I learned that being underestimated is survivable. Nobody on that road thought a woman my size should be the one walking it. It did not matter what they thought. The ground did not care about their opinion of me, and neither in the end did I. What could not be survived was being wrong, so I built my whole self around never being wrong when it counted. And I let people think whatever they liked in the meantime, because their thinking had no more power over me than the weather. Major Rourke thought I was a lost lieutenant. That was the weather. I had walked worse roads than his opinion. The adjutant stepped to the microphone. I heard it before Rourke did, because I was listening for the shape of the ceremony, and he was listening only to himself. A change of command has a rhythm, a liturgy almost, the same words in the same order that the army has used for longer than any of us have been alive, and I knew where we were in it. The formation had been brought to attention. The official party was seated, and now over the field, in the flat, amplified voice of a young officer reading from a card, came the two words that turn a gathering into a ceremony. Attention to orders. 400 soldiers came to the position of attention with a single sound, the sound of a field of boots settling at once. And the flags lifted in the small breeze, and on the reviewing stand, the seated ranks straightened. Rourke did not stop. He was still looking at me, still building toward whatever he was going to say next, his timeline collapsing in his head, and he had decided that I was the reason. And he leaned in. "Are you deaf?" he said again. I said the rear. Behind him on the dais, 2 4-star generals went still. I saw them before he did, because I was facing that way, and he was facing me. General Harlan Voss was the presiding officer, the senior commander whose job it was to hand the colors from the outgoing commander to the incoming one. And General Margaret Ellison was seated beside him, the higher commander in the chain, present because the group I was taking mattered to her, and because she had known my record for longer than I knew she had. They had been sitting in the composed, patient way that generals sit through ceremonies, and then the adjutant began to read the orders, and the orders had a name in them, and the two of them heard the name at the same instant, and they both turned their heads toward the far end of the field, toward the near rank, toward the small woman in service uniform who was supposed to be up on that dais, and was instead standing in the grass being told to stage in the rear. I watched General Voss's face change. I watched him lean to General Ellison and say something. And I watched her rise from her seat. And I watched him rise with her. And I watched 2 4-star generals step down off the reviewing stand in the middle of a ceremony. Which is a thing that does not happen, which is a thing I had never seen in 19 years, and start walking across the grass toward me. He did not hear his own mistake coming. I did. I had been hearing it for a lifetime. I had just never before been standing in a place where the whole army was about to hear it with me. The adjutant read on, unhurried, because the adjutant could not see what was happening at the edge of the field and had a card to get through. "Colonel Sloan Beckett," the voice said over the loudspeakers, rolling across 400 soldiers and a reviewing stand and 1 protocol major. "Having been assigned to command." I watched the words reach Major Rourke. Here is the thing about a truth that has been hidden. It does not arrive gently. It arrives all at once. And it arrives through the body before it arrives through the mind. I saw it hit him. I saw his mind try to hold 2 things that could not both be true. The junior officer he had decided I was, and the name coming over the loudspeakers, the name attached to the command, the name the whole field had come to honor. I watched him not understand, and then half understand, and then understand completely. And I watched the color go out of his face in stages. From the top down, like water draining from a glass. He turned. He had to turn, because generals were coming, and you feel 4 stars approaching the way you feel weather. He turned, and he saw General Voss. And behind Voss he saw General Ellison. And on Ellison's shoulders and Voss's shoulders, he saw the 4 stars each. And his hand, the hand that had knocked my cover to the grass 10 seconds earlier, came up in a slow, stunned salute that no one had asked for. General Voss did not return it right away. He stopped in front of us, and he looked at me, and then he looked at my cover, which was back on my head now, squared where I had squared it, and then he looked at Major Rourke, and he said quietly, in a voice that did not need to be loud, because 4 stars are never loud, "You have no idea what you just did." Rourke's mouth opened. Nothing came out. General Ellison came up beside Voss. She was a lean, gray-eyed woman who had spent 35 years being underestimated in rooms even harder than parade fields, and she knew exactly what she had watched happen because she had lived a version of it herself more than once, and she was not in a forgiving mood. She looked at Rourke's name tape. "Major Rourke," she said, "step back from the officer you're about to work for." He stepped back. The adjutant, still reading, still unaware, had reached the end of the orders, and the ceremony was calling for me now, the incoming commander, to come forward and take the colors. The whole machinery of the day was turning toward me, 400 soldiers and a stand full of rank and a set of words older than all of us, and it did not care in the slightest about Major Rourke or his timeline or his opinion of my size. It called my name and it wanted me, and there is no force on this earth more indifferent to a small man's mistake than a ceremony that has decided it is time. General Voss put out his hand toward the dais, an old-fashioned courtesy, and offered to walk me to my place. I did not need it, but I understood what it was. It was a 4-star general telling 400 witnesses, without a single word, exactly whose morning this was. I did not raise my voice. I never did, that whole morning. The orders did that for me. I walked to the dais. I could feel Rourke behind me, frozen at a rigid, stricken attention, and I did not look back at him, because looking back was a thing the smaller version of me would have needed, and I did not need it anymore. I walked past the near rank, past the specialist with the crab on his chest, and I saw his face. And his face was doing something I will remember for the rest of my life. He was not gloating. He was proud. He had watched a stranger knock his new commander's cover to the ground, and he had watched his new commander pick it up and put it back on, and say nothing and let the truth arrive on its own. And something in him had decided, in that moment, that he would follow me anywhere. I had not earned that yet, but I intended to. I took the colors from Colonel Everett Shaw, the outgoing commander, a decent, tired man who had run the group well and was ready to be done, and who had watched the whole thing from the dais with a face carefully arranged to show nothing. As the staff passed the flag from his hands to General Voss's hands to mine, the old weight of it settling into my palms, Shaw leaned a half-inch toward me and said, under the noise, "Welcome to command, Colonel. You'll find it's mostly this." "Mostly what, sir?" "Mostly deciding what to do about the Rourkes," he said. "You get one right now. Everyone's watching to see which way you go." I held the colors. 400 soldiers held their attention, and I understood that the ceremony was almost over and the command was about to begin. And the first decision of it was already standing behind me on the grass, pale and ruined and waiting. I want to be honest about the aftermath, because the aftermath is where these stories usually lie. In the version people want, the general turns to me and asks what I would like done with the major, and I deliver a line, something cold and perfect, and the major is marched off and destroyed, and the field erupts, and justice is loud and immediate and sweet. I have heard people tell my story that way. It is a good story. It is not what happened. What happened is that the ceremony finished the way ceremonies do, with the pass and review, the ranks marching past the stand, the band, the salutes, the long, slow machinery of tradition grinding on to its end, while a wrecked major stood at the edge of it, and a new commander held a flag and thought about mercy. When it was over, when the formation was dismissed and the field began to empty and the folding chairs began to clatter down, General Voss came and found me. General Ellison was with him. We stood a little apart, near the reviewing stand, in the flat, bright sun. "Colonel Beckett," Voss said, "I have watched a great many ceremonies. I have never watched one where the incoming commander got assaulted on the field by a member of the host staff." He said the word assaulted plainly because that is what it had been, and he wanted me to know he was not going to pretend otherwise. That major is mine to deal with. Technically, he belongs to the installation, not to your group, but you are the injured party and you are about to be the most senior EOD officer on this post, and I am not going to do anything with him that you have not signed off on. He let that sit. Then he said, quieter, "Say the word, Colonel, whatever the word is." I understood the offer. It was a real one. General Voss was telling me that if I wanted Major Rourke's career to end that afternoon, it would end that afternoon, and no one would ever question it, and there would be a certain kind of justice in it, clean and complete. He was also, I think, testing me, the way the good ones test you, not to trap you, but to learn you. Every senior officer wants to know what a new commander does with power the first time it is handed to them, because that is the only honest measurement of a commander there is. Not what they say. What they do the first time, no one would blame them for doing the cruel thing. General Ellison was watching me with her gray eyes and saying nothing, and Command Sergeant Major Vidal had drifted up to stand a respectful distance off, close enough to hear, because she wanted to know too. Everyone on that field who mattered was waiting to see what kind of commander I was going to be. So was I. Let me tell you what I weighed, standing in the sun with a 4-star general offering me a man's career. I weighed the satisfaction. I will not pretend it was not there. Major Rourke had knocked my cover to the ground because he had looked at a small woman in a service uniform and decided she was no one. And that decision was not an accident, and it was not unusual. It was the same decision 1,000 men had made about me across 19 years, in 1,000 smaller ways, and here, finally, was one of them who had made it in public, in front of witnesses, in front of generals, at the exact moment the truth was about to be read aloud. The universe does not often hand you a clean shot at the thing that has been grinding at you your whole life. It had handed me one. Part of me wanted to take it so badly my hands almost moved, and I weighed the cost. Because here's what command teaches you in the first hour, the thing no one can tell you until you are holding the flag. The win costs more than the loss ever did. When I was a lieutenant, being underestimated cost me nothing but pride, and pride is cheap, pride you can spend all day. But standing on that field as a colonel, I understood that Major Rourke, in the space of one ceremony, had gone from a stranger who wronged me to a soldier who fell, in a manner of speaking, under my shadow. Not my direct command, but my responsibility in the way that everything on that post that touched EOD was about to be my responsibility. And a commander who uses the first hour of command to destroy the man who embarrassed her has taught 400 soldiers exactly one thing: that this commander settles scores. I did not want to be a commander who settled scores. I wanted to be a commander whose soldiers walked toward buried death and came home, and you do not build that kind of trust by proving how sharp your knife is. You build it by proving that your judgment is steady when your blood is up. The whole trade I came from was the trade of keeping your hands still when everything in you wants to move fast. I had kept my hands still on a road in Afghanistan with 100 lives on the line. I could keep them still on a parade field with one career on the line and a general handing me the match. "Sir," I said to General Voss, "I don't want his career." Voss's eyebrows moved a fraction. Ellison's did not. I think she had already known. "He assaulted you, Colonel," Voss said. He was not arguing. He was making sure I understood what I was giving up. "He did," I said. And in front of 400 people, the orders of the day corrected him more completely than I ever could. He's going to remember this morning for the rest of his life. I don't need to add to it. I need him to learn from it. Those are different things, and if I end him today, he learns nothing, and neither does anybody watching. Command Sergeant Major Vidal, off to the side, made a small sound in her throat that I chose to read as approval. General Ellison spoke for the first time since the field. "What do you want, then?" "I want him," I said. "For a week. I want the installation to loan me their protocol major for 1 week, and I will decide what he does with it." Voss looked at Ellison. Ellison looked at me, and something in her gray eyes warmed by about 1 degree, which from her, I would learn, was a standing ovation. "Done," Voss said. He held my eyes for a moment longer than the conversation required, and I understood that I had passed something, though he would never say so, because generals do not tell colonels they have passed a test. They simply file the result away and adjust how much rope they hand you the next time. Then he did a thing I did not expect. He bent down, the presiding 4-star general of the whole affair, and he picked up a program that had blown off a chair onto the grass, and he set it back where it belonged. A small, unnecessary courtesy, and I realized he was showing me something. He was showing me that a person's size does not determine which tasks are beneath them. A 4-star will pick a program up off the grass. The only people too important to bend down are the ones who have mistaken their rank for their worth, and those are exactly the people you cannot trust with power. Major Rourke had been one of them at 0800 that morning. General Voss, 30 years and 6 stars of distance further along, was not. The lesson was not lost on me, and I do not think he intended it to be. General Ellison lingered as Voss moved off toward his car. She looked at me with those gray eyes, and she said, "I read your packet before I came. The road in 11. I know what you did out there." She paused. "Most people who have done a thing like that spend the rest of their careers making sure everyone knows. You were walking a troop line in a service uniform, trying not to be noticed on the morning they gave you a group. I noticed that. I want you to know I noticed." Then she nodded once and was gone, and I stood in the sun holding a folded flag and understanding that I had been seen fully by exactly the person whose seeing mattered and that it had happened quietly, the way the only recognition worth having ever does. I have thought a great deal in the years since about the difference between mercy and weakness, because people confuse them constantly, and the confusion does real harm. Weakness is when you fail to reckon with a wrong because you are afraid of the cost. Mercy is when you reckon with it fully and then choose, with your eyes open, to leave the person a way forward. They look similar from the outside. They are opposites on the inside. The coward and the merciful commander both decline to destroy the man in front of them, but the coward declines because he cannot afford the fight, and the merciful commander declines because she has already won it and has decided what to do with the winning. I had won on that field. Not because I outranked Major Rourke, though I did. I had won the moment I picked up my cover and put it back on and said nothing, because in that moment I had refused the 2 lies that people like Rourke depend on. The first lie is that being disrespected makes you small. It does not. Only agreeing that you are small makes you small, and I had not agreed. The second lie is that the only answer to contempt is contempt, that if he goes low, the only way to reclaim yourself is to go lower. That one is more seductive, and it is just as false. I had refused it too. So when I asked General Voss for Major Rourke for a week, I was not being soft. I was collecting on a debt in the only currency that would actually change anything. I found him the next morning at the installation protocol office, where he had been sitting for a day and a night waiting to find out whether his career was over. He stood up so fast when I came in that his chair skidded. He was still pale. He had not slept. When a man's whole picture of himself has been shattered in public, he does not sleep, and Major Rourke's picture of himself had been a very polished one, and it had shattered very completely. "Colonel Beckett," he said. "Ma'am, there is no..." He stopped. He had clearly rehearsed something all night, and it had all left him. "Sit down, Major," I said. He sat. "I'm not here to end you," I said, and I watched him not believe it and then slowly begin to. "General Voss offered me your career yesterday. I turned it down. I want you to understand that, because I want you to understand that whatever happens next, you are alive as an officer, because I chose it, not because you deserved it. That's not a threat. It's a fact, and you're going to sit with it." "Yes, ma'am." "You knocked my cover to the ground because you looked at me and decided I was no one," I said. "I want you to really hear that. Not that you were rude, that you made a judgment about a human being's worth based on her size and her uniform and her being where you did not expect her, and then you acted on that judgment with your hands. Do you understand what you actually did?" His jaw worked. To his credit, he did not reach for an excuse. "I made an assumption," he said, "and I was wrong. And I put my hands on a senior officer, on anyone. I put my hands on someone because I decided she didn't matter." "Yes," I said. "That's the thing, not the rank, the deciding she didn't matter." "Yes, ma'am." I told him what the week would be. It was not a punishment in the way he was braced for. I did not have him scrubbing anything or standing in any corners. I gave him a roster, 400 names, the whole formation that had stood on that field and watched every soldier in the group I now commanded. "You're going to learn every name on this list," I said. "First name, last name, job, where they're from, and one true thing about them that isn't in a file. You're going to do it by talking to them. You're going to spend the week walking the ground, Major, the way I was walking it when you told me to stage in the rear. And at the end of the week, you're going to come back and tell me about them. And if I think you actually saw them, we're done. And this never follows you. Start with the ones you almost stepped over." He looked at the roster. He looked at me. I think he had come in ready to be broken and had not expected to be handed something that would require him to become larger instead of smaller. "Why?" he said, and then caught himself. "May I ask why this, ma'am?" "Because your problem isn't that you were rude to me," I said. "Your problem is that you can look at a person and not see them. That's a dangerous thing in any officer. In my branch, it gets people killed, because in my branch, the person you don't bother to see is the one who knows the thing that would have saved you. I can't fix that with a reprimand. Maybe I can't fix it at all. But a week of learning 400 people you decided not to see is the closest thing to a cure I know. Take it or don't. If you don't, General Voss's offer is still on the table, and I'll make one phone call." He took it. He learned the names. I did not fully expect him to, and I watched for it, the way you watch a suspect device, and I was ready for him to phone it in. He did not. Something had happened to Major Rourke on that field. The shattering had been real, and shattered things can be reassembled better or worse. And he chose better. He walked the formation for a week. He sat with soldiers in the motor pool and the arms room and the little cluttered offices where the real work of a unit happens. He came back at the end of it with a notebook full of 400 people. And he sat across from me, and he told me about them, and somewhere around the 80th name, his voice changed. And I understood that he had stopped performing the assignment and started living it. Vidal reported in on him midweek, unasked, the way she reported in on everything. She had watched him in the motor pool, she said, standing in his pressed uniform among soldiers in coveralls, and she had watched the soldiers decide, over about 10 minutes, that he was not there to catch anyone doing anything wrong. She said the moment it turned was when a sergeant asked him, half a joke, half a dare, whether he even knew what any of the equipment did. And instead of bluffing, Major Rourke said he did not, and asked to be shown. She said a man asking to be shown is a different animal from a man performing that he already knows, and that the shop had smelled the difference immediately, the way a unit always does. He is learning them, she told me. More than that, he is letting them teach him. I do not know what you said to that man, ma'am, but you put a crack in him, and something useful is growing in the crack. I told her I had given him a roster in a week. She said, "That is not what you gave him," and did not explain, and walked off, which is a thing senior enlisted soldiers do when they have decided you will figure out the rest on your own. He told me about the specialist with the crab, the one who had lifted his chin at me on the line. His name was in the notebook now, first and last, and his job, and where he was from, a town not so different from mine, and the one true thing that was not in the file, which was that the specialist's older brother had been EOD before him and had not come home, and that the specialist had joined the branch anyway, on purpose, to walk the roads his brother had walked. Rourke's voice caught a little when he told me that. A week earlier, he would have walked past that young man on a parade field and seen a body in a uniform taking up space in his timeline. Now he knew why the young man walked toward the thing everyone runs from, and knowing it had changed something in him that a reprimand never could have. "I understand now," he said at the end, "why you were on the field." "Tell me," I said. "Because they were about to be yours," he said. "And you wanted to see them before you were their colonel. You wanted 5 minutes of just looking at them. And I took that from you, and I didn't even know it was a thing that could be taken. You gave it back," I said. "Sort of. You've seen them now. Most officers who outrank them never will." He was quiet. Then he said, "Permission to speak freely, ma'am." "Granted." "You could have ended me. I keep coming back to it. General Voss, one phone call. It would have been fair. Why didn't you?" I had thought about how I would answer that, because I had known he would ask it. They always ask it. The ones who are becoming better ask it because they need to understand the thing that spared them. "Because the day I take command by breaking the first man who wrongs me," I said, "is the day I teach 400 people that the way to be safe under me is to never cross me." and soldiers who are busy staying on my good side are soldiers who won't tell me the truth, and in my branch the truth is the only thing that keeps anyone alive. I didn't spare you for your sake, Major. I spared you for theirs. You were the cheapest possible way to show 400 people what kind of commander they have. I'd have been a fool to waste it on revenge. He absorbed that. Then he stood, and he came to attention. A real one this time, nothing performed in it, and he saluted me, and I returned it, and that was the end of it. I heard later that he requested EOD, that the installation protocol major put in a packet to leave the polished career behind and go to the schoolhouse and learn the trade of walking toward the thing everyone runs from. I do not know if he made it through. It is a hard school, and it turns away better men than Rourke had been the morning he knocked my cover to the ground. But he had become someone who wanted to try, and that was not nothing. That was, in fact, a great deal. The command itself was mostly what Colonel Shaw had promised. It was mostly deciding what to do about the Rourkes in 100 smaller forms, day after day, decisions that no ceremony prepares you for and no medal recognizes. It was soldiers who made mistakes and needed correcting without crushing. It was the endless work of building a unit where 400 people would tell their commander the truth, even when the truth was frightening. Because in my trade, a frightened silence is the thing that gets someone killed on a road far from home. None of that work has a ceremony. That is the thing no one tells you about command before you are in it. The parade field, the colors, the band, the 2 4-star generals crossing the grass, all of it is the smallest and loudest fraction of the job. The actual job happens in offices with the door closed, in the decision about whether a good soldier who made a bad choice gets a second chance or gets a line on a form that follows him for 20 years. The actual job is 100 quiet judgments a week that no one will ever thank you for, and that will nonetheless decide, one by one, whether 400 people trust you enough to tell you the truth. There is no medal for the judgments. There is only the unit you slowly become, or fail to become, as a result of them. I decided early that I would rather be trusted than feared, because fear is loud and trust is quiet. And I had spent my whole life learning that the quiet things are the ones that hold. I walked the ground every day. I never stopped. Command did not cure the habit, it deepened it. Every morning before the building woke, I would come in and stand at the window over the parade field, and I would look at the grass where it happened, and I would remember the 2 impulses, the one that told me to shrink and the one that told me to strike, and I would remember choosing neither, and I would carry that memory into whatever the day was going to ask of me. The specialist with the crab, the one whose brother had not come home, deployed under my command the following spring. I saw him off myself, which is not a thing colonels are required to do, and I watched him walk toward the aircraft with the particular unhurried walk of a person who has made his peace with the ground. And I thought about his brother, and I thought about the road in 2011, and I said the small private thing I say for all of them, which is not a prayer exactly, but is the closest I come. Be right, or come home, preferably both. He came home. Not all of them do. He did. Command Sergeant Major Vidal retired at the end of that year, and at her retirement she said, in front of everyone, that the thing that had made her decide to follow me was a morning on a parade field before I was ever her colonel, when a man knocked my cover to the ground, and she watched me pick it up and put it back on, and refused to become either smaller or crueler than I was. She said she had served under a lot of officers who could win a fight. She said she had served under very few who could win one, and then declined to enjoy it, and that those were the only ones worth following, because those were the only ones who would not eventually turn the same sharpness on their own people. I keep her words in the drawer with the medals now. They are worth more. So that is the story, the true version, without the perfect cold line, and the man marched off in ruins. A major I had never met knocked my cover off my head at my own change of command, because he looked at a small woman in the wrong uniform in the wrong place and decided she was no one. He was wrong about that, and it turned out he was wrong about 4 or 5 other things too, and I found out about them one at a time over the week that followed. I did not say a word to defend myself on that field. I did not need to. I put my cover back on, and I set my feet, and I let the orders of the day be read, and the orders had my name in them, and 2 4-star generals stepped off a reviewing stand and crossed the grass because the ceremony had decided it was time, and one of them started a sentence over the major's stunned salute that he did not get to finish, because there was nothing left to say that the morning had not already said. You have no idea what you just did. That was the sentence. General Voss never finished it. He did not have to. The whole field finished it for him. I want to talk to you now, whoever you are, because I think you may be why this story found you. If you have ever been made small in front of people who should have known better, I want to tell you the one thing my 19 years and my scar and my morning on that field taught me. And it is not the thing you would expect. The thing is not that you should fight back harder. The world is full of people telling you to fight back harder, to be louder, to make them respect you, to give as good as you get. And sometimes there is a place for that. But it is not the deepest lesson, and it is not the one that will save you. Because if the only way you can feel like yourself is by making someone else smaller, then you have handed the people who diminish you the power to decide who you are. You have just agreed to play their game on their field with their rules. The deeper thing is this. Their contempt does not have the power to make you small. Only your agreement does. When a person looks at you and decides you are no one, that decision lives entirely inside them. It is a fact about their eyes, not about your worth. You do not have to accept delivery of it. You can pick your cover up off the grass and put it back on and square it and set your feet and simply be, without apology and without retaliation, exactly who you already were before they got it wrong. And then you can let the orders of your own life be read. Because here is what I have found to be true over and over on parade fields and on roads far from home. The truth about who you are does not need you to shout it. It does not need you to prove it in the heat of the moment to the one person who refuses to see it. The truth is patient. The truth is like a ceremony that has decided it is time. It will arrive in its own way, on its own schedule, and it does not care in the slightest about the small man standing in its path. Your only job in the meantime is to refuse to disappear, to keep your hands still, to stay who you are while the record catches up. Someone told you to stage in the rear. Do not go. Not because you owe them a fight. Because you owe yourself the simple dignity of standing where you belong, quietly until your name is read. It will be read. Put your cover back on. The end.